Hi there, I'm Danny Flexen and welcome to the latest edition of SecondsOut ReFLEXions. This week I'm going to talk, at least briefly, about boxers and boxing personalities getting involved in areas where they're perhaps not expert and whether it's worth the hassle. We've seen in the last couple of days some prominent boxing personalities weighing in, pun intended, on the Dominic Cummings controversy, which is still ongoing as I film this right now. I think he's going to make a statement today, hopefully after this edition of ReFLEXions has gone live, not before. How dare that gnome-like idiot try and steal my thunder. But regardless of what I think of him, it's more interesting to note what some of the boxing people have said. And we saw yesterday, Sunday, Tony Bellew was the first one to kind of break cover, stick his head above the parapet. And fair play to him for going against public opinion, or the majority of public opinion, I should say, and basically defending Dominic Cummings and from his understanding of the story, saying he pretty much did what any father would do, travelling, whatever it was, 250 miles to Durham to place his kids with their grandparents and to look after them because he was falling ill and his wife was falling ill with coronavirus. However true any of that is, there's been allegations that he stopped along the way, that he went back for a second visit, and perhaps most damning of all, that he decided to go and visit a castle, which apparently is like a posho version of a night out with Ratty and the Nonce. If you don't know who that is, I think he's also known as Michael Parkin Bum. But moving on from that, the rights and wrongs of what Cummings did, it's clear that the vast majority of people are damning him over his actions. And despite that, Bellew sent two tweets, a first and then a follow-up, even after getting the initial wave of criticism that I'm sure he must have anticipated, basically saying he doesn't know what the big deal's about, he only wants to really hear positive news, and that the level of criticism that's been waged against Dominic Cummings is probably excessive, which is a fair enough viewpoint, I suppose, depending on what the facts of the case are, and some of those are still up for discussion. He does seem to be in a bit of a hole, old Dom, but we'll see how that goes. And then this morning, and this one was maybe more egregious, albeit much shorter and hasn't attracted as much attention yet, was Eddie Hearn tweeting a picture of Cummings surrounded by photographers and members of the press and saying something along the lines of, and I'm not going to do it verbatim because I haven't got my laptop in front of me and I'm using my phone to film this, something along the lines of, if you were to hear later on that this guy had committed suicide, would the same people criticising him now be the ones preaching be kind later on? Be kind being a reference to something the late Caroline Flack said, and it has become synonymous with her tragic passing because she was hounded by the press, and that had a huge impact on what eventually became of her, or what she did, unfortunately. Now, it's a bit of a stretch, obviously. You know, Caroline Flack did do something wrong and was hounded for it, and it probably did become excessive. Dominic Cummings, it's only been a couple of days and there's already been several other issues with him that people have been angry about before this even happened. There's a level of hypocrisy in this case that wasn't there. It's not like Caroline Flack was going around telling everyone to, you know, she was saying be kind, of course, but she wasn't a huge advocate against domestic abuse, which is what she was charged with at one point. With Dominic Cummings, without going too much into a comparison that might not really work anyway, he's been one of the advocates of the stay home, save lives policy, and the fact that he's then broken that policy, regardless of how good the reasons are, and that's going to be kind of discussed, that's an issue that comes across as hypocrisy, and I can see why people don't like it. And for someone like Bellew to criticise it is especially surprising because he's often criticised hypocrites in the past. And the Eddie Hearn thing, a lot of people kind of replied to that straight away and just said, look, there's a big difference between be kind and valid criticism. I think David Lee said it on Twitter. Big Right Hook, who's Lewis, also said it. I'm sure a lot of people will emulate those views because, yeah, it's right to be kind and not kind of hound someone to the point where they feel they've got no other place to go. But the flip side of that is there's got to be a level of scrutiny, especially from government employees and advisors. So regardless of all that, my personal opinions, the real thing I'm trying to get to the bottom of is, do you feel that boxers and other people in the public eye who aren't directly connected with politics or whatever it might be, in Caroline Flack's case, celebrity and that kind of thing, should they have an opinion, everyone's entitled to an opinion, but should they vociferously express that opinion on social media? Everyone's entitled to, but is it wise if you're in the public eye to do that? Because surely you're just inviting a huge amount of criticism and the possibility that your profile could be affected and your selling power could be affected. So what I guess I'm really saying is, because I spout all sorts of opinions on Twitter and I'm not worried about it because I'm not really in the public eye and not to any great extent. If you were a top level boxer or a top level boxing promoter or a recently retired boxer, to be absolutely accurate, would you, if you had a really unpopular opinion, would you still feel the need to express it on Twitter? Do you admire it because it's going against the grain? Or do you think, bit of common sense, probably shouldn't say anything, it's not worth the hassle? Really interested to know what you think. Because, you know, I think there's some boxers out there, and I'm not talking about the people that have commented recently, I'm just saying generally, that when there's fans at home who criticise boxers, a lot of times boxers will come back and say, well, have you ever laced on a pair of gloves? What do you know about it? The whole kind of idea being that if you've never been in a ring yourself, you're not fit to criticise. Fair enough. But then surely it works both ways. And if you're a boxer, you shouldn't be criticising or defending politicians if you're not going to allow fans to criticise boxers. And even more so, the fact that fans partially pay boxers' wages. I don't know. Maybe I'm just talking out my ring, but let me know what you think. Not just about me talking out my ring. I'm sure a few people agree with that. But about this particular situation. Is it better to stick your head above the parapet, however unpopular it may be? Or if you're in the public eye, is it better just to keep your mouth shut, think what you want to think, and try and protect your own image? Be great to hear your views. I'll respond to some of them in the comments section. I'll be back next week for ReFLEXions, Monday 4:30, and this Thursday for ReFLEXpectations at the same time. Thanks very much, and I'll see you all soon. Cheers.